Yeah, looks like we got 13 people in the audience right now. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate everyone who's on the call right now just for being patient regarding registration payment. As we disclosed, our payment processor dropped Hemp Lab, which is a registered 501c3, which has been operating since 2018, focusing on education. We were dropped by our payment processor without notification. And yeah, we've been kind of had a field day with our back end, but hopefully y'all were able to get what you needed. And I know that, for those of you who are unable to make this live, we will be recording and sharing as a follow-up. And this is the first one, and we know the next couple are also going to be pretty high quality material that will be coming through. So today we have a great group that is here to help the community grow. Obviously, we're looking down the barrel of a new proposed extract regulations. And as a community, we find the best way to support each other is to be looking at this piece by piece, because an informed citizen group and an informed industry is an industry that can provide comments, it can be active and help direct and shape moving forward. Today we have on the call Jason Klimek, who's a lawyer with Boylan Code based out of Rochester, New York. He's a tax attorney and a cannabis attorney. He's also on the board of Hemp Lab. So thank you and welcome, Jason. We also got Kaelan Castetter, who is he's CEO of Castetter Cannabis Group and also one of the founding members of the New York Cannabis Growers and Processors Association. Brought these guys in the fold. They came in kind of last minute. This is something that we've been talking about doing and it feels really important. So I really appreciate you guys taking the time. And I know that we're going to get some really good information through this process. So Kaelan, thank you for being here. And Jason, thank you for being here as well. So the way this workshop series is going to roll out, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to actually look at the bill line by line, section by section, and we'll probably rotate between readers or speakers. And the hope is that every step of the way, y'all in the audience and also us on this up here on the webinar screen are asking questions and being critical. Our goal is from this event to be able to help the community at large determine the value of what's proposed, what's at risk, what's golden in these bills, and then hopefully have that informed comment period, comments to be submitted through the comment period. And so towards the end of this webinar, we will submit in the chat box a link to the NYCGPA website. Actually, maybe Kaelan, if you or Jason, one of you guys could bring that up. Just a link to the comment box. There's a portal there. And as I understand it, NYCGPA is going to continue to build out more of a robust comment. So one that will be designed specifically for retailers, for growers, for processors. So as we continue the series, there's going to be more resources available for the community to provide the comments. And our hope is that what we're doing today is going to help shape your perspective for both this extract bill and all things cannabis moving forward, because we know that is on the horizon. Again, folks, please use the chat box to submit questions. Jason and Kaelan, let's keep our eyes out for that moving forward, just because I'll be running the
comments as they come.
Yeah, that'd be great. And of course, if one feels like it'd be better in a little bit, that's great. So today we are looking at what we're calling section 1, which is more like administration. So section 1005, which starts on page 7, 1005.1 starts with definitions. Point 2 is processor requirements. 3 is retailer requirements. 4 is approval of licensing. 5 is a renewal. 6 is transfer and amendment. So we consider this stuff kind of like the administrative work, where the next is beginning to look at licenses and requirements beyond what's just in the administrative category. So again, if you have the document yourselves, feel free to go side by side with us. I'll also be sharing through the webinar. So we'll kind of have it on a shared screen. And yeah, make sure you drop your questions in the chat and we'll make time for them. So we're gonna go to 1:15. And any questions that don't get answered, we'll queue them and try to follow up either in email format or just address them at the beginning of the next webinar. And again, thank you to everyone who's joining in. Appreciate your patience with registration and looking forward to diving in. Now, Jason, can you see the regs here?
Yes.
Okay, great. And all right, so, and just looking for, great, a second here. We're going to stop the share just because this is acting a little funky. Try that one more time. Spinning wheel of death on Adobe. Great. Well, give us 1 second, folks. Jason, do you happen to have the document up yourself in the background? Just because I need to reset my.
I do.
My Adobe. Okay, I think it's back in action here. Let me try that one more time. And there we go. All right, so definitions, section 1005.1. So for the purpose of this part, the following terms shall have the following meanings. Broad spectrum means a concentrate extracted from hemp containing multiple cannabinoids, but where all delta-9 THC has been removed. Cannabidiol or CBD means the naturally occurring phytocannabinoid cannabidiol found in hemp, but does not include synthetic cannabidiol. We got a long list of the other.
On broad spectrum there, right? That basically means 0 T distillate, T-free distillate, specifically distillate. Would not consider it to be isolate.
Great. Was that a question, or are you just saying that?
Just a clarification.
Sweet, great.
Yeah.
And I think, as I was asking Kaelan earlier, I think it's important to look at that definition for broad spectrum for a second and note that it says all delta-9 THC. So that is not THCA. And if there are methods to create a concentrate that contain THCA, that you could, by that definition, call it broad spectrum. So it's just interesting.
Yep, great. Appreciate that. I am not going to read through all the cannabinoids because there's a list and my tongue is already tied. So just knowing these are the references that are listed. I'm curious if you guys think, so cannabinoids do not, it starts off with cannabinoids means any phytocannabinoid found in hemp, including but not limited to XYZ. Cannabinoids do not include synthetic cannabinoids as a term, as that term is defined in subsection G of section 3306 of the Public Health Law and section 9-1.1 of this title.
And that piece of the law actually defines what the synthetic cannabinoids are, and delta-8 is not. So according to this definition of cannabinoids, delta-8 is a phytocannabinoid found in hemp, even if it's processed in. So delta-8 is not a synthetic cannabinoid, therefore, it's not necessarily, restricted by that definition right there.
Great. Yeah, obviously that's a booming thing right now. So people have been asking that question left and right. Cannabinoid hemp product means hemp or any product manufactured or derived from hemp, including hemp-derived terpenes in its final form that are used for human consumption. Cannabinoid hemp products shall not include cosmetics.
To me, that's interesting because this incorporates the idea of adding CBD or any other cannabinoid to something, which was not previously covered. So, if you're just mixing a cannabinoid with food or beverage ingredient, that is now a hemp product and you're subject to these regulations. And it's also for human consumption. So there's a little conflict there with federal law because the FDA includes, under the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, includes animal consumption as well. So like CBD treats for dogs are technically not allowed under the FD&C. Whereas it's accepted right out of the regulations for New York.
It's excluded out, exactly. Yep, that's a good point. And then also for cosmetics, so a cosmetic is defined by the FDA as articles intended to be rubbed, poured, sprinkled, sprayed on, introduced into, or otherwise applied to the human body for cleansing, beautifying, promoting attractiveness, or altering appearance. So that means if your product is topically applied, but it's meant to be used for instance, pain, you could consider that a topically applied supplement. If it's used as a beauty product, as a cosmetic beauty product, then you do not have to produce it to the labeling or manufacturing standards in these proposed regs.
That's really important to note.
Do you think that there's potential for people to kind of label or say that they are in the cosmetic area to specifically get outside of these regulations?
Yeah,
and is that
absolutely.
right for that? Could that be abused?
Absolutely, yeah, and I think you'll see the Department of Health start to make clarifications on that, on what is a topically applied supplement and what's a cosmetic.
Mm-hmm.
It's really comes down to intended use, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of gray area there.
All right, so E, cannabinoid hemp retailer means a person licensed by the department to sell cannabinoid hemp products, including via the internet to consumers in New York State.
Another one that we just need to point out that this is, a change from the past. And if you're a retailer, there's a retail license now and you need to get it.
Yep. Cannabinoid hemp processor means a person licensed by the department to extract hemp, extract, and or manufacture cannabinoid hemp products, whether in intermediate or final form, to be used for human consumption. Certificate of analysis means a certificate report from an independent third-party laboratory meeting all the requirements of section 1005.10 of this part, describing its analytical testing and results. Corrective action plan means a plan submitted by a licensee and approved by the department under this part for the licensee to correct a violation or non-compliance with this part. Cosmetic means a cosmetic meeting the requirements of section 321 of Title 21 of the United States Code and recognized as such by the department. Distillate means a concentrate where a segment of cannabinoids from an initial extraction are selectively concentrated through heating and cooling with all impurities removed. Distribute means to offer or sell cannabinoid hemp products to a cannabinoid hemp retailer for retail sale to consumers within New York State. Extract or extraction means the process of concentrating or isolating one or more cannabinoids from hemp or cannabinoid hemp. Flower product means any form of cannabinoid hemp product consisting of the flower, buds, leaves, or stems of the hemp plant, including trimmings thereof, intended for retail sale of consumers without further processing. Obviously, this is a highlighted big bold that we'll be exploring more out throughout this document, but that's the definition of flower at this point in time. Full spectrum means a cannabinoid hemp product that is 1, derived from a hemp extract, 2, contains cannabinoids, aromatics, essential vitamins and minerals, fatty acids, protein, chlorophyll, flavonoids, or terpenes, and 3, has not been reformulated or has not had cannabinoid isolates or distillates added to it. Hemp means the plant Cannabis sativa L and any part of such plant, including the seeds thereof, and all derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, acids, salts, and salts of isomers, whether growing or not, with a delta-9 THC concentration of not more than 0.3% on a dry weight basis.
And on that, just want to point out again, that is not the federal definition of the proposed USDA regs. They use total THC. This is using delta-9. So there could be potential interstate commerce issues if you are a New Yorker producing to New York standards and send it across a state line. I don't know how much the feds have actually been taking any action, but it's something to just kind of be aware on the periphery.
Great. Hemp extract means all derivatives, extracts, cannabinoids, isomers, acids, salts of isomers derived from hemp and used for human consumption with a delta-9 THC concentration of not more than an amount determined by the department. Hemp extract shall not include any food ingredient, or food additive that is generally recognized as safe pursuant to the federal law, or 2, any extract derived from hemp that is not used for human consumption. And isolate means concentrate that is more than 95% comprised of a single cannabinoid compound created by a chemical extraction process. Lot or batch means a cannabinoid hemp product produced during a period of time under a similar condition and identified by a specific code that allows traceability. Manufacture means to prepare, treat, modify, compound, process, package, or otherwise manipulate hemp or hemp extract into the cannabinoid hemp product. Manufacturing shall not include growing, cultivating, cloning, harvesting, drying, curing, grinding, or trimming when authorized pursuant to Article 29-A of the Agriculture and Markets Law, or 2, extraction as defined in subsection K of this section.
Yeah,
New
so
York-
the Ag and Markets Law that they're referring to there, 29A, is, basically defines everything that will stay with Ag and Markets, growing, everything. So basically, if you have a growing permit, what this means, if you have a growing permit, you can trim, dry, cure, grind, prepare, cultivate, etc. And you don't have to get a manufacturer license to do that.
So it means we can trim all of our biomass if we want.
Trim all your flower that you can't sell.
Yeah.
And this is similar to federal, where USDA is taking those types of things, and FDA is regulating the extract. So New York's sort of emulating at least the structure at the federal level.
Yep.
Great. Another big one, New York hemp product means a cannabinoid hemp product that is derived from hemp exclusively grown, extracted, and manufactured in New York in compliance with section 1005.13 of this part. Person means an individual, partnership, corporation, limited liability company, association, or any business entity or institution of higher education by whatever name designated and whether or not incorporated. Serious adverse event means a medical occurrence associated with the use of cannabinoid hemp product in a human that results in one or more of the following outcomes: death, a life-threatening event, inpatient hospitalization or prolongation of existing hospitalization, a persistent or significant incapacity or substantial disruption of the ability to conduct normal life functions, or a congenital anomaly, birth defect.
This is important because if you're a producer, you're a brand, you're a manufacturer, you have to have some way of having this reported to you and then reporting this back to the department. I think it's like within 24 hours. So that's why the definition is significant.
Yeah, and it's definitely important too to recognize like bottom line insurance considerations. It's not outlined here, but
it is a requirement later on.
Yeah, but just this is definitely when we begin to really underline the importance of insurance through this process. All right, so total delta 9 THC concentration means total delta 9 THC plus 0.87 times THCA. So it's kind of the methodology they're taking here is, do you guys, so that's total delta 9 that is also including, the conversion through the THCA, which is interesting. So it's kind of speaking to total, but it's not, because it's incorporating the acid into the mix, which is interesting.
Well, it's defining it. It's defining total THC.
Yeah, it's just a weird way to do it because usually you see it total THC, not total delta 9 THC. But that's what they're getting at, is it's delta 9 plus 87.7% of the THCA, because you lose the 12.7% in decarboxylation.
Great. X, used for human consumption means intended by the manufacturers or distributor to be 1, used for human consumption for its cannabinoid content, or 2, used in, on, or by the human body for its cannabinoid content. All right, so dropping into the next section. If anyone's got any questions about definitions, time's now, but we can always look at that later.
I would just say definitions are extraordinarily important because that's what drives certain aspects of the law. The definition, as a lawyer, I use definition sections so many times because that's what we have to reference back to, because a word may have a meaning in regular life, but it means something completely different under the law. So understanding those definitions is incredibly important.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. Jason, you want to take this next section, or I can keep going, whatever you want?
Sure, I can do it. So, section 1005.2, applications for cannabinoid hemp processor licenses. So, subsection A, no person or entity shall extract hemp extract or manufacture cannabinoid hemp product or hold itself out as a cannabinoid hemp processor unless it is in compliance with Article 33B of the Public Health Law and is licensed by the department. Subsection B, an application for licensure shall be submitted to the department on a form prescribed by the department, which shall include the following: name and address, telephone number, email of the applicant, identification of all real property, buildings, and facilities that will be used in extracting or manufacturing of the cannabinoid hemp, the days and hours of operation, the EIN of the applicant, for applicants extracting, identification of all the extraction methods that will be used for extraction, proof of New York workers' comp and disability insurance, summary and description of the applicant's sources of hemp or hemp extract to be used, and the cannabinoid hemp products to be manufactured.
Jason here, I mean, if you have a business and you have, an evolving business, then, you really, it's tough because maybe you don't know all the places you're going to want to get it sourced from. If you're not licensed yet, you're probably not operating. Maybe you are, but maybe you're not. And, that could be an issue in terms of boxing you in. Now, Jason, when you look at this, do you think of that as, well, if you then go outside of that, then, you're violating your agreement? So like with the Department of Ag and Markets, right? If you had a research partner agreement and your real research partner agreement, what you could do, is pretty much, attached to your application.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if, this is kind of boxing you in the same way. What do you think, Jason?
I agree with that. I mean, some of the provisions in here, like just simple things like identifying the locations. If you're starting out and starting a business, does identifying the location actually mean that, I have the right to use these premises? I have a lease or I own. And if it does mean lease or own, does that mean that you're locked in? You've locked yourself into those locations before you've been granted a license. Now there is something lower on that or later on that's provisional approval, so maybe that mitigates some of that. But it certainly could be an issue where you potentially invest tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Manufacturing and processing facilities are not cheap. Before the state grants you a license, or maybe doesn't grant you a license. So there's definitely a lot of uncertainty for people entering the market that I think needs to be a little bit more clarified, and maybe the state takes a different position or something like that, so that people who are looking to get into the industry maybe have a little more surety before they go out and spend hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars to do things. Now there is that provisional license or provisional approval we'll get to, and there is the ability to amend, but again, it's all subject to department approval. So I do think that they kind of put you into this box at first and say, you have to be within this, but we'll see how far along that actually, goes in practice, because, there's always what the regs say and then what actually happens.
Yeah. Interesting.
Great.
All right. So I think we're on subsection 8. A statement that the applicant's standard operating procedure will incorporate any language or requirements provided by the department and adequately address quality assurance, security, and a plan to ensure all hemp and hemp extract obtained by the applicant meets the requirements of the part. That was similar to the pilot agreement. You kind of had to say you would abide by the law. Evidence of good manufacturing practices that will be used in the extraction of hemp. And that can come in the form of either proof of a qualified third-party GMP audit or a detailed plan for obtaining a qualified third-party GMP audit within 6 months of approval. So there's that provisional approval process. So you don't have to have a GMP audit before you actually get a license, but you do have to have it all lined up and disclose that all to the department. So, that's more steps and more hoops to jump through for applicants who are just getting into this.
Yeah, and if anyone in the attendees have questions about the GMP process, we went through one last spring, and we worked with some clients on some other audit processes. So, if you have any questions now, throw that in there. I'd be happy to answer what I can. It's a very extensive process. And, I hear a lot of people say, well, the facility is GMP. Well, facility is only part of the GMP plan. You also have to be HACCP certified. You have to write HACCP plans for each product. You have to really, have a good understanding of what products you're making before you go into that GMP policy plan writing. You probably have to hire someone to do the policy plan writing. So it's a really extensive process. And I see a lot of operators underestimating the complexity of that process.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think most people probably are not familiar with GMP. I mean, it's a pretty specialized area. So yeah, great points, and definitely
it relates to dietary supplements as compared to food and beverage, which would be part 117 and what auditor you use, et cetera. So yeah, feel free to shoot your questions into the chat on that.
Yeah, great. And I do know in further subsections, we will come back into contact with GMP certified. So if you don't got a specific one now, we'll probably have to look at it later. And there are multiple, as you said, there's different tiers of GMP that we're looking at here, dependent on the license that you're applying for. So I think keep your eyes open for that. Okay, so we got to that. We're on subsection 10, it looks like.
Yep. So let's see, copy and description of any other licenses issued by state or federal authorities related to the operation of the licensee or the facilities where license activity will occur. A description of any other businesses or business activities conducted on the premises to be licensed. Copies of the organizational documents, which that one's interesting from a lawyer perspective, because typically, like, you have an LLC. The operating agreement is just a private contract. So to have to disclose that to the government is interesting, because that is how your business operates, and that is how profits are allocated. That's how people are elected into roles. That's everything. That is your blueprint for your LLC. So it's interesting that they want that type of oversight, and not incredibly common. Typically, I don't ever have to disclose an operating agreement. Let's see. A statement attesting to the applicant and those in control of the entity, meaning a person that has the ability to direct the activity of the applicant or licensee, including principals, officers, or others with such control, are of good moral character. And what does that mean? I don't know.
This is their ability to deny someone without having
Right.
a good explanation for denying them. And this is actually in a lot of applications throughout the state in liquor and whatnot. So this is kind of language that pops up everywhere in the state.
Yeah, it's a way for them to kind of skirt, any kind of discriminatory claims or things like that. And they can just say, well, good moral character. And then if you were going to allege, well, I was denied because of some illegal reason, discrimination, you'd have to gather all the facts. This is their kind of out, their loophole for if we want to deny you for a reason that we don't want to articulate. And yeah, it's in a lot of different things, but there's no hard definition of what it is.
Yeah, there's a question. I don't know if it's less of a question or
It's more like a statement. Yeah. This probably pertains back to listing the operating agreement. And so they're saying the comment is they want their tax money, so they want to know who's getting what percentage of profits. I mean, it does come back down to that. And,
yeah, I think they're going to get, if you're going to have income tax, I think you're going to find that in your yearly filings anyways, as an individual. But I think that point more so relates to the retailer license. They want to know who is filing, or who is selling products that they can enforce. That's part of it. I think the retail license is really about visibility for the department, and then also revenue too. I think any program like this probably right now has to justify their expense and has to show that they pay for themselves. So I think a lot of the fees, they're working backwards. This is how much it's going to cost us to staff and run the program. We can't ask Budget Director Mojica for any more money this year. If anything, we're going to get money cut. And so this is how we're going to pay for it.
I would definitely agree with all of that. Yeah, I mean, anything done in New York, even if you're a non-New York resident or company, New York gets its piece of tax, so that's going to have to be filed on a tax return. I mean, they could put together the pieces that if you were an out-of-state person and they saw the operating agreement and you didn't file your taxes for the New York chunk, they could put that together, but more than likely it's in there so that they can kind of just manage things and see who's actually part of this thing.
From a compliance perspective too, I think too, they might be looking at, I think there may have been issues that came up during the pilot program with owners or people managing products that weren't actually managing the project, and maybe any sort of illegal activity that cropped up through that. So I think that's more comes down to diversion, legal activity, especially around THC. I think that's probably a lot of the intent behind that provision there, I would say.
And can also, and I agree with that, and can also weigh in on any, and this would maybe even be into the recreational licenses, later on, if and when cannabis is legalized, but the whole women minority owned business thing too, because you have to have actual ownership. It's, 51% has to be owned by a woman minority to qualify, but they also have to be in control. They technically have to be at the top level position, actually doing the job. You couldn't have, my wife is a physician. I couldn't list her on the application as a 51% owner and say she's in control, because no one would believe a full-time physician could also run a company. So those are important things too, so that this is all disclosed to the government, so that they can track all of that.
All right, 14. Statement that the applicant will comply with all the applicable state and local laws and regulations relating to the activities in which it intends to engage in under the license. A statement that the applicant has the experience and competency to undertake the activities for which the licensure is sought. Now, when I read that one's interesting to me, because what does that mean? Does that mean, are people in a potential catch-22 that if you want to get into this, you already have had to have done it, which would then thereby eliminate everybody from doing it who isn't already doing it? Or is this something that they're just throwing in there that's not going to really have any teeth? And I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, it could also come down to, my production manager worked, at, an apple slicing facility, in Geneva or whatever, or in Auburn, and they have understanding of HACCPs and, GMP protocol, cleaning, maintenance, blah, blah, blah. It could mean that. You're right, it could mean a lot of things. It could just simply mean I'm a research partner agreement. I have a research partner and I'm doing the same thing that I've been doing for 2 years and as a research partner.
Mm-hmm. And then the catch-all, any other information the department requires, which it's regulatory. In New York, unlike the federal law, does not have a mandatory public comment period. So New York can actually enact regulations overnight and suddenly you wake up and you're subject to new requirements. So that's one that, gives them the ability to continually adapt, which is, there's pros and cons. A pro might be that they can adapt to something that changed and they need to, address it. A con could mean they surprise people. So, it's a give and a take. Let's see. Applications under this section shall be accompanied by a non-refundable application fee of $1,000 for extraction and manufacturing, or $500 for manufacturing only. So the extraction and manufacturing, that's twice the price of the former pilot processing agreement. And that's important to note that it's the application cost. There are licensing costs that we'll discuss later. But as Kaelan said, they're probably working backwards to help with their budget. And so we'll see that kind of come into play as we continue further down. And then finally, they'll just verify the truth and accuracy of the information in the application. Very standard, you're filling out something for the government, they're going to make you attest to the accuracy of it.
Oops, I lose you there. And then,
so we're moving on to the retail license now.
are we on section? So I saw we did C and then we did D. So you just summarized this, you're saying?
Yep, I just summarized it.
Okay. Itself. All right, what page is the retail license on?
It was right below.
How did I miss that here? So
because it's almost looks like it's part of subsection D.
Okay, thank you. Great. Okay, so it does look like it is. So application for cannabinoid hemp retail license, section 1005.3. A, no person shall offer or sell cannabinoid hemp products to consumers in New York State or hold itself out as a cannabinoid hemp retailer unless it is in compliance with Article 33B of the Public Health Law and this part and is licensed by the department.
And people may not love that, but it's a good thing. It's a relatively low cost license, and it prevents people from, there's the famous within the cannabis circles of story of of an ag and markets person going in and saying to a purported CBD retailer, and saying, hey, you can't, it was CBD in a lollipop, and hey, you can't sell that. We don't allow food with CBD in it. And they're like, oh, don't worry, it doesn't actually contain CBD. Now this gives a way for the government to address that, because either they are licensed and they could pull their license for not complying, or they're just not licensed. So it's actually, in my opinion, a good thing to license these retailers so that the government has a way to enforce things and, really have accountability for consumers.
Great. B, an application for licensure shall be submitted to the department on a form prescribed by the department, which shall include the following. 1, the name, address, telephone number, and email address of the applicant. 2, the physical address of any real property where the applicant intends to operate, the days and hours of operation of such retail facility, and for any online retailer, the internet address of the applicant. 3, the name of the manufacturer, cannabinoid processor, and state or country of manufacture for all cannabinoid hemp products the applicant intends to offer for sale. Definitely have heard some frustrations and concerns about that as a list. So again, do you need to know all your products in the gate? And then it does kind of begin to create a limit. And for those who are pro New York products, traceability is really important, but I have heard some retailers express some concern about listing all those steps that may not be completely available, but that from consumer health perspective is something that we find pretty essential. 4, a summary and description of the types and forms of cannabinoid hemp products the applicant intends to offer for sale. And 5, a statement that the applicant will not sell inhalable cannabinoid hemp products to consumers under the age of 21 years.
I think that's an important one to note too, because this also lends credence to maybe this is the blueprint for adult use regulations, because they picked that 21 age, which would be adult use. And it also calls into question now, do we start to have to be do retailers have to kind of abide by the same marketing limitations they have for alcohol, where under federal law, you can't market alcohol to anyone below 25 years old, which amazingly there's a difference apparently in marketing between a 25-year-old and a 24-year-old. So to me, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I think great. 6, a statement that the applicant and those in control of the entity, meaning a person or persons that have the ability to direct the activity of the applicant or license, including principals, officers, and others with such control, are of good moral character.
again, this moral character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd be curious again, as a kind of a blanket statement, how it could be used in disproportionate ways, impacting, if we've talked a lot about including people who've been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs in the cannabis industry. And even in our hemp regulations and from the research partner agreement, it's been pretty clear that you got to, obviously you got to list your background, but there does seem to be it seems prohibiting to enter if you have previous charges. And now that's a blanket statement. I have not personally tried. I don't know anyone who has personally tried to get a license who has, let's just say, a felony because of cannabis, for example. But yeah, what is good moral character, and how will that prohibit or enable the decision-making process? 7, a statement that the applicant will comply with all applicable state and local laws and regulations relating to the activities in which it intends to engage under the license. 8, a statement that the applicant will not distribute or sell any cannabinoid hemp product in the form of injectable, transdermal patch, inhaler, suppository, flower product, including cigarette, cigar, pre-roll, or any other disallowed form as determined by the department.
There's a flower ban. That's a flower ban.
There's the flower ban. I'm also curious about injectable. Are they talking about literally into the vein, or you see RSO hitting? It's in the form of like syringes, high gauge syringes where it's RSO being Rick Simpson oil, which is a form of bioactivated cannabinoids that people just eat it. And so RSO is a pretty big product for the aging community, especially in medical markets. And it comes in a syringe, but the syringe doesn't have a needle at the end, but it's something you could put on food in a regulated dose.
Oh no, that wouldn't be injectable.
Yeah. And so I'm curious just from that, but still being in like the injection, you have a syringe, are they going to try to regulate that? And I do lean more towards what you just said, but it makes me wonder.
And I mean, there's a couple of terms here too that make me question things is, okay, a transdermal patch, but you allow lotions. So, what's the differentiation there other than, I've rubbed a quantity onto my skin versus I put a patch on my skin? Is there a substantial difference there?
Well, so the interesting thing about that is, they allow lotions, but not clearly, right? So that if that's on the cosmetic side, transdermal patch. So my best explanation on this is that a lot of the transdermal applications fall under an OTC monograph process in terms of medical device, or if the OTC is specifically being used with a transdermal patch. So so backing that up there, I kind of assume the New York State Department of Health didn't want to cross the FDA in that situation with an OTC.
So would you also say, because my other one was inhaler, and that I'm sure, I guess, has a very specific definition. But my question too is, would that include, or could it include vaporizers, or is inhaler a non-heat?
I would assume that inhaler is probably defined by the FDA, and there's probably no supplements that are approved for inhaler.
Mm-hmm.
So okay. So I found it's a product categories. We've got nasal spray, pump nebulizer, pump nebulizer manual. So it has a product code, product classification, and medical devices in the FDA's database. And so it's also exempt from the GMP regulation, except for general requirements concerning records of compliant files, as long as the device is not labeled or otherwise represented as sterile. So that would be on a medical device manufacturing side. So what I would say probably the reason on the inhaler and the injectables or the suppository or transdermal patch probably all is because there's no precedent for those being used and approved as a supplement is what I would gather, but I wouldn't want to speak for the department. I don't know why, but that's the reaction. That's the conclusion I came to. When does the flower ban go to effect? You see that question, Zach?
Oh, that is a great question. I did not see it immediately. What's the date? So we're talking formally being implemented. Is it June 1st?
No, I don't know. No, I don't think so. So essentially there's a couple things going on here, because there's the public comment period ends on the 11th, and then there's a 45-day review period for the department to review and possibly change these regulations. But you also have to understand too, as soon as a retailer applies, they're signing an attestation that they won't sell any of these products. So in a way, it goes into effect then too.
Yeah.
I would also argue, and others may disagree with me, but I would also argue that flower's never been allowed to be sold to a retailer or to a customer without a license, because under the pilot program, you had to be licensed at all times to hold hemp, raw hemp flower. there was no outright prohibition, but if you read between the lines, it essentially prohibited the unlicensed possession of hemp.
Yeah, but a hemp was not a controlled substance after 2018. So it's unlicensed possession or sale possession and sale isn't necessarily covered under the pilot program. It's authorized under the pilot program, but it's not prohibited after the Farm Bill passed in 2018. So it was definitely a gray area, but yeah, it was never, expressed. It's not like there's an about face by New York State.
And it's also too, we know one of the primary loopholes is, you can sell flower out of state. You can sell your products out of state, or you have to sell to a in-state processor or to another farm, as I interpret it, someone who holds a license. But there's nothing prohibiting out-of-state actors selling flower back into New York State.
Oh yeah, there is. Oh yeah, absolutely, because this covers a retailer, even if you're selling online or in a store.
Oh no, I'm to be clear, in this window, the dawning and sunset of the 2014 and 2018, it's kind of been this like window where, the product, it's like there has not been anything explicitly prohibiting the import and then in turn retailers selling a product that came from somewhere else. From a license holder and grower in New York State, it's been more on the no side in general to sell it to anyone besides a license holder out of state, and that's tricky in general. But so great question on when does it go in, the flower ban go into effect. I think the first, just want to underline what Kaelan said, when you sign the agreement with the state, that's when you as an individual are engaged in that agreement. And then implementation and enforcement, I can't remember what the initial date is, I think in this document, but it was, if I'm not mistaken, there's something about the summer of 2021 when the regs will begin to get enforced.
I don't think I saw that, but I did see that as a retailer, you can continue on until April 1st, as long as you are intending to apply.
Got it. Great.
So
we can continue to look at that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's going to be different depending on the retailer, depending on how quickly a retailer gets licensed.
Yep. All right, so 9 is proof of certificate of authority from New York State Department of Taxation and Finance as applicable.
That's the right to collect sales tax. So anybody that has the imposition to collect sales tax, the requirement, they have to get a certificate of authority. So Department of Taxes say you have to have, or Department of Ag Markets or Public Health is saying you have to have this certificate of authority because you are going to be required to charge sales tax.
Yeah, and that's any products you sell. You have to have that authority. You usually have to have that authority with you too.
Yep.
So 10, any other information as may be required by the department. So then there's C, all applications under this section shall be accompanied by a refundable license fee of $300 for each retail facility to be licensed by the department.
So each location, important to know. So if you have a bunch of locations, you need a license for each one of them.
And then D, applicants shall attest to the truth and accuracy of the information contained in the application. The department, in its discretion, may reject or deny any application if it determines that the information contained therein is false, inaccurate, or omits a material fact. Right.
We have another comment. Is there a date when retailer license applications will be available to be submitted?
We don't know, but I would assume that will probably be one of the first things to be available in January.
Right. Good
Very,
question.
very easy application to get for them to do. And so I would assume that sometime in January they'll be available on the site. It could be January 1st.
Great. Jason, you want to take a swing at the next one? 1005.4.
Sure. An application for licensure under this, dealing with license issuance and denial. A license application shall only be approved by the department if it's a complete application submitted to the department with all the necessary fees. The application demonstrates to the satisfaction of the department that the applicant will operate in accordance with public health law and this part. The applicant is ready, willing, and able to properly carry on the activities set forth in the application. So, ready, willing, and able. for you have to get the license, you have something ready to go. You are up and set up. The applicant is of good moral character. Again, there's that catch-all. In determining whether to deny a license application, including an application for renewal, the department may consider the following factors with respect to the applicant, its owners, and any affiliated person, including parties with a controlling interest. So they can look at anybody who's affiliated with you. So they'll consider false representations, failure to supply further information necessary to process a license application within 30 days, conviction of any crime or sustained charges of administrative violations of state or federal law, rules, or regulations related to the operation of a site growing, extracting, manufacturing, selling marijuana, hemp, or cannabinoid hemp in accordance with Article 23A of the Correction Law. So, yeah, they're looking directly at cannabis under the criminal law. A pattern of deficiencies, including but not limited to refusal or inability to produce records or reports as requested by the department, failure to correct deficiencies in accordance with an approved corrective action plan, deviation from regulations or standard operating procedures so as to jeopardize the quality of hemp extract or cannabinoid hemp products, and refusal to provide department employees with access to the premises. So you gotta let them in if they want to come investigate or audit. Knowledge of sale of cannabinoid hemp products not meeting the requirements of this part, general failure to comply with the requirements of this part, denial of license shall preclude the applicant from being licensed as a cannabinoid hemp processor, cannabinoid hemp retailer, either directly or indirectly through any other person. So if you're denied, you can't just partner with somebody else and try again. That will be denied. No license application shall be considered for any applicant who is substantially the same as an applicant who has been denied a license within 6 months of determination by the department denying such application. In the event that the applicant receives 2 successive license denials, no application shall be considered for that applicant within 2 years of the last determination by the department. So you can't just change to a different entity name and try again. The department will prioritize applications from applicants who have previously held a valid research partnership agreement. In that one, I think it's interesting because especially for the hemp extract, they haven't really issued those licenses in quite a while. So you're really taking from a very specific subset of license holders or permit holders, I guess, that haven't really been available for a while. So that's interesting. To me. For applicants seeking licensure as cannabinoid hemp processors, the department may provisionally approve the application before cannabinoid hemp processor license is issued, and the applicant can begin extracting and manufacturing. The provisionally approved applicant must satisfy the following requirements: certificate of occupancy, a copy of the approved applicant's qualified third-party GMP certification, payment of licensing fees, and here are the much higher licensing fees. So in addition to the application fee of $1,000 for extraction and manufacturing, it's a $4,500 per location license fee. So you're $5,500 in right at the beginning to get the license, or for manufacturers, it's a $2,000 per license per location, plus the $500 application fee. Proof of sufficient product liability insurance for all manufactured cannabinoid hemp products. That one, you're going to have to find commercial insurance companies. Kaelan, have you worked with any commercial insurance companies? Is it difficult to obtain product insurance?
Not product liability. I mean, there's a lot of hurdles you have to go through in terms through the DD process in terms of are you selling legally. I think these licenses will actually help that process, to be honest. But if from a PL perspective, it's not too much of a PL and GL is not too difficult. It's a lot easier than say getting, but some insurance companies might say that they approve you and then they go through like an audit process and then they drop you. That's happened to us before.
Yeah, I mean, because insurance companies by their very nature are risk adverse, and if they really start looking into this, they may not want to take the chance that, well, technically what you're doing is illegal under federal law, And therefore, we don't want to have to deal with the insurance companies on this, or we don't want to deal with liabilities on this. So I don't have any personal experience with it, but I could foresee, there at least being a few hurdles. Subsection 5. Evidence.
We got a question. Let me just see.
No, it's just coming.
Got to run, Richard. Yeah, thank you, Richard. Take care.
Thank you. Let's see. Evidence to the department's satisfaction that the applicant will be able to comply with this part, which may include an on-site inspection. If provisionally approved applicant fails to satisfy the requirements of in subdivision F of this section within 6 months, the provisional approval will be revoked and the application denied, provided the applicant may request additional time and shall have the opportunity to demonstrate to the department a reasonable documented effort to complete the requirements of subdivision F. Cannabinoid hemp processor license shall be valid for 2 years from the date of issuance. Cannabinoid hemp processor seeking to terminate the license shall submit a withdrawal. And cannabinoid hemp retailer licenses shall be valid for 1 year. And lastly, the cannabinoid hemp retail applicant who submit a completed application to the department on or before April 1, 2021 may sell cannabinoid hemp products at retail to consumers before having their license approved or denied by the department, provided the cannabinoid hemp retailer applicant adheres to all of the requirements of this part. So that's what Kaelan was talking about earlier, where technically you don't have a license yet, but there is literally no question you cannot be selling flower.
All right, so I think this is the last section that we're looking at, the license renewal. So we'll probably breeze through this, but yeah, keep questions coming as needed.
The next section is actually point 6 that we're.
Oh, great. No, I appreciate that. Thank you. So yeah, we do have 2 more. Okay, great. So we are looking at license renewal, section 1005.5. An application to renew any license issued under this part shall be filed with the department not more than 90 days nor less than 30 days prior to the expiration thereof. If a renewal application is not filed at least 30 days prior to the expiration thereof, the department may determine that the license shall expire and become void on such expiration date. So get it in a month before, 30 days before, if you are renewing your license. Renewal applications shall be accompanied by a non-refundable application fee and a refundable license fee as follows. Cannabinoid hemp processor extraction manufacturing is a $1,000 application fee and a $4,500 license fee. Cannabinoid hemp processor manufacturing only is a $500 application fee and a $2,000 fee. Or 3, a cannabinoid hemp retailer, which is a $300 license fee per retail location. And then 4, the license fee shall be returned if the licensee renewal process application is not granted. C, the application for renewal shall be submitted to the department on a form prescribed by the department and include such information as the department may require. D, the department shall determine whether to renew an applicant's license based on the relevant factors from section 100.4 of this part. Okay, and the last section for today is section 1005.6, transferability, license amendment, and change in ownership or control. A license issued under this part shall be effective only for the licensee and shall specify the following information. 1, the name of the licensee. 2, address of the real property or if applicable, the online retailer website where the license activities may take place. Date of issuance, the date of expiration, license number, and the list of activities the licensee is permitted to perform under that license. B, licenses shall not be transferable or assignable, including without limitation to another licensee without prior written approval of the department. A change in a majority ownership or controlling interest in the license or person holding the license shall constitute a transfer for the license.
And from my perspective, I do a lot of M&A stuff, mergers and acquisitions, and this is interesting to see whether the department will more or less rubber stamp transfers, or they'll actually be looking into these transfers and changes of controlling interest, because it was pretty common under the pilot program where somebody had a license holder, or somebody had a processing license, and then another party would come in and take over majority control because they couldn't get a license because they weren't issuing them or something like that. So that the non-transferability is going to be interesting to see how that plays out in reality.
That's great. So a question just came in from Michelle. If we have until
you don't have to. No, April 1st was you have until April 1st to apply as a retailer. So you have until April 1st to apply as a retailer. We will need to stop selling flower, et cetera, as of 1/1/21. No, not necessarily, but once you are licensed as a retailer, then you won't be able to sell anything that's prohibited. So flower would be one of those.
Yeah, and it does sound like the language is by April 1st, they want retailers to be applying or have applied. But by no means, I don't interpret that if you're not ready to be a retailer yet, you don't necessarily have to, I don't see that as a deadline of April 1st. That being said, if you are a current retailer and you have products that are being sold, it's probably in your best interest to get in sooner rather than later, because I imagine there's less hoops to jump through or prove your past. If they want to audit you and what you've been doing, if you apply in August, but you've been selling all the way through and selling flower or other products, it might complicate the process.
Well, if you're selling cannabinoid hemp products past April 1st as a retailer and you're not licensed, you fall under the prohibitions.
Great.
You have a maximum of 3 months left, essentially 3 months in a week, to be in compliance with this law. After that point, you must be in compliance.
Great.
Unless they come out with an advisory that there's some sort of grace period. I mean, they have to do something about the existing inventory. So.
Although we did see something like that in California where they raised the requirements for like all the testing and what could be in it, and then they just had fire sales basically of getting the product off the shelves to be in compliance by, I think it was like January 1st of whatever year, 2019 or something like that.
So C is last is to obtain approval from the department for the transfer of a license. A transferee must submit an application to the department on a form prescribed by the department demonstrating an ability to operate the license in compliance with this part, along with an application fee pursuant to section 1005.2 and 0.3. D, the department may deny an application for transfer of license if the application fails to demonstrate the transferee will comply with all the requirements of this part, or if the licensee has a record of poor performance, meaning 2 or more violations pursuant to section 17 of this part within the past 2 years. So E is a licensee may amend a license to add or delete permitted activities or change the location of a licensed facility by submitting a written request to the department along with the application fee pursuant of section 2 and 0.2 and 0.3 as applicable. And lastly, section F. As a request to add permitted activities shall be reviewed by the department in accordance with section 1004 of this 1005.4 of this part. I'm curious what you guys think added permitted activities might be. Is that simply an amendment, or is it something outside the scope of what's here?
I would interpret that as saying, you had to disclose what products you were selling, if you're a retailer, and therefore, you have to amend the license to include that. It's not permitted activity is not a defined term, but it's what's permitted under the law. So I think anytime you're going outside the scope of your application, you got to go back to the department and say, hey, we want to do this.
Yeah, great. Okay, cool. I'm going to stop the share here. So we'll come back to our regular group. We got about 7 more minutes in this program here. So if anyone's got any more questions.
There's a question about where can you get the regs.
Yeah, where can we get the copy of the regs? Anyone have a quick link to that? I have the PDF.
Yeah, I'm looking for it. I think.
Great. Yeah, we'll share that with you in just 1 second. Michelle, thanks for the question. Cool. Well, definitely, as more questions are coming through, or we're looking for that PDF, I just want to thank everyone for taking the call today. This was a really great run through. I think we nailed the timing. Hopefully this is helpful for y'all. It's helpful for myself to get more feedback, to not be operating in a vacuum, kind of have people to backboard off of. And the next 3 Wednesdays from the same time, 11 until 1:15, we have the next sections. And our next week, we'll look at what we're calling, more of the licenses and requirements. So requirements for hemp processors, for products sold at retail, for packaging and labels, lab testing, requirements for hemp retailers in general, and advertising. I think that's gonna be a really interesting one. A lot of nitty gritty in there. And if we don't, under the law that was passed in December 2019, there was supposed to be a commission of the industry and government officials. Did that ever happen? Kaelan, you might be able to speak to that. Like, there was discussion about creating a commission. Now, are you talking about the Hemp Industry Commission, I imagine?
So yeah, so there's like an advisory panel that is required to be created under the Hemp Extract Law. I can find the specific part in the statute, but no, that to my knowledge has not been created yet.
Yeah, great question.
Hemp Working Group, maybe it was called, or the Hemp. I think it was advisory.
Where are the minutes from the meeting?
So either the flower ban is rescinded or that the new proposed bill to allow.
My feeling on that is that it'll coincide with adult use. I don't think you can have a hemp market and adult use market where hemp bans flower and adult use doesn't. And I don't think you can have an adult use market that bans flower. So I think probably, assuming that adult use passes with the budget bill, it'll amend the hemp bill by April 1st. That's my feeling, because I think anything else just doesn't work.
Who was on it? Or the minutes from the meeting? No, there's no meeting. So there was no, to answer that question, it's 33.9-R Hemp Work Group, and it uses the language of may. So the commissioner, in consultation with the commissioner of the Department of Ag and Markets, may appoint a work group of researchers, processors, producers, processors, manufacturers, and trade associations to make recommendations for the industrial hemp and cannabinoid hemp program. So they actually could decide not to do it too, and so they haven't done so yet. What are the chances that either the flower ban? Yeah, I mean, listen, I think, yeah, if anything, maybe an adult use, so maybe by the budget session, in terms of, when that might happen, I don't know. Chances that it gets, revoked in the public comment period, I mean, it's not better than 50-50. I don't know the exact chances, but it's definitely not better than 50-50. And it's going to come down to what the comments are, how many comments, and the economic impacts that are apparent from those comments and whatnot.
And the medical dispensaries selling flower, they're doing it under the guise that you're supposed to vaporize it. Whether patients do that, probably not, but that's how they're getting around the prohibition on selling smokable flower on the hemp market or the medical market, is that it's vaporizing. And that's why it's ground and not sold in buds.
I do
and that
want
was
to
actually pulled off the shelves for a little while. That just came back maybe within the last month or so.
There's a couple more questions in the chat, but I do want to answer one in the Q&A. If you were planning on selling your products at farmers markets, would you need a license for each individual market?
There's a great question.
Yeah.
We were just, I was on the Farm Bureau's hemp committee, and this is something that we're talking about that I raised, that, they're going to have to allow you like some sort of marketing permit like they do with alcohol, where you can go and sell and taste at other events, and whether it's farmers markets or, these little pop-up holiday markets, craft shows, wine and beer fest, stuff like that. I mean, like, where people sell a bunch of different products and get out there without a brick and mortar. So under this, there's no room for that, but I think it's important to include in your comments. And it's important that the department will see those comments. I would assume that was just an oversight.
And there is that temporary license that's like later on. We'll see. I can't remember if it's $100, and it kind of seems to allude to pop-up shops or events or someone who may be selling out of a vehicle, like, something like a farmer's market. So I think we'll explore that next section or maybe the following one, but really, really good question.
And Dwayne, to answer your question there about the chances, the common period is gonna be very important. So if you have, stores and customers and, as many comments speaking to the economic impact, the better. I think the economic impact, that's the argument that will tip the scales. There's no public health argument that's going to, have them allow flower. That's not going to happen. So it's got to be an economic argument, in my opinion. The Department of Health is overseeing the cannabinoid hemp program. To the question that's in the chat.
If legalization does pass, this will all probably or mostly be transferred over to Office of Cannabis Management. So that could be a transition that we see in 4 to 6 months, maybe, or something like that, which would be nice to have it all under one roof and coordination between the departments, because we've kind of seen that now with ag and markets doing their thing, public health doing their thing, and it's kind of hard to get continuity sometimes.
Great. So we've hit our 1:15 mark. Just to close, first, I want to give a big thanks to Jason and Kaelan for taking the time today. This is crazy time of year, but it means a lot. You guys are willing to join us and speak with the community. Appreciate everyone who signed up, and all y'all who are not members who are offered a contribution. Just know you're keeping the lights on. Zoom webinar costs money. All these things cost money. So your contribution really does go a long way, and we appreciate you taking the time and joining us. I also want to give a big shout out to Harris Beach Law Firm, our sponsoring member. They put up some good money last year, and that they've really been helping keep the lights on. And just a big thanks to all of our members, both individual and businesses, who've been contributing. And we're doing this all for y'all, and appreciate you showing up, and really look forward to the next one. If you got any comments or questions, please send us a follow-up email. I promise you that the registration payment process will be clearer for the next event and the next 2 events. So keep an eye out for an email I'll probably send closer to Friday that'll have a clear directions of how to pay, etc. And again, appreciate everyone's flexibility with all the mishaps moving forward. And thank you for your time, and we'll see you all next time.
Thanks.
See you.